Only 1% control their thoughts before 8 a.m. Stoic Mental Armor Routine, Stoicism. Before the world demands your attention. Before the notifications begin. Before the messages arrive. Before the opinions of others start influencing your mood. There is a small window of time that may determine the direction of your entire day. Most people waste it. A few people master it. And according to Stoic philosophy, the quality of your morning often determines the quality of your mind. Think about it. How many people wake up and immediately surrender control of their thoughts? They reach for their phones. They scroll through bad news. They compare their lives to strangers. They fill their minds with noise before they have even taken control of themselves. Then they wonder why they feel distracted, anxious, overwhelmed, and exhausted before the day has truly begun. Marcus Aurelius understood a truth that remains just as powerful today as it was 2,000 years ago. The first battle of every day is not against the world. It is against your own mind. And if you lose that battle early, every challenge that follows becomes harder. Today, we are going to explore the Stoic Mental Armor Routine, a morning philosophy practiced by the strongest minds in history. A routine that helps you build discipline before temptation appears. Focus before distraction appears. Strength before adversity appears. Stay until the end because the final lesson may completely change how you begin every morning for the rest of your life. And before we begin, subscribe to Focus and Conquer for more powerful lessons on Stoicism, self-discipline, mental toughness, and personal mastery. Imagine two people waking up at exactly the same time. They live in the same city. They face similar challenges. They have similar opportunities. Yet by the end of the year, one has transformed their life while the other remains stuck. Why? Because success is rarely decided by dramatic moments. It is often decided by small daily decisions. And many of those decisions happen before most people are fully awake. The first piece of Stoic mental armor is this: own your mind before the world does. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of his duties before rising from bed. He understood that the mind is vulnerable in the early morning. Whatever enters first often shapes everything that follows. There was once a young apprentice who trained under an elderly philosopher. Every morning the apprentice rushed to hear gossip from the marketplace. He listened to rumors, complaints, arguments, negativity. By midday his mind was already exhausted. His emotions rose and fell depending on what he had heard. The philosopher noticed this pattern. One morning he stopped the apprentice and handed him a cup filled with clean water. Then he dropped a handful of dirt into it. Instantly the water became cloudy. "What happened?" asked the philosopher. "The dirt changed the water," replied the apprentice. The philosopher nodded. "That is exactly what happens to your mind every morning." The lesson was unforgettable. Your mind is clear when you wake up. Protect what enters it. Guard it carefully. The strongest people do not begin their mornings consuming chaos. They begin by creating clarity. The second piece of mental armor is equally important. Expect difficulty before it arrives. Most people begin their mornings hoping nothing goes wrong. The Stoics began differently. They prepared themselves mentally for obstacles. Not because they were pessimistic. Because they were realistic. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself that during the day he would encounter impatient people, difficult people, selfish people, unreasonable people. By expecting challenges, he reduced the power those challenges had over him. There was a merchant who traveled through dangerous roads every month. His assistants constantly worried about thieves, storms, and delays. Yet the merchant remained calm. Someone eventually asked him why. His answer was simple: "I expect problems before they arrive." Because he expected difficulties, he was never shocked by them. And because he was never shocked, he could focus on solving them. This is one of the greatest Stoic secrets. What surprises you controls you. What you prepare for rarely does. Imagine starting every morning by reminding yourself, "Today I may face criticism. Today I may face disappointment. Today I may face setbacks. But none of these things can destroy my character. Suddenly adversity loses much of its power. The next layer of mental armor may be the most overlooked of all. It has nothing to do with motivation. Nothing to do with success. Nothing to do with productivity. Yet it determines whether your mind remains strong or weak throughout the day. And it begins with a single question. What deserves my attention today? We will explore that in the next chapter. Before we continue, subscribe to Focus and Conquer. Because the strongest minds are not built by accident. They are built through daily discipline. And every great day begins with a great morning. Remember this. If you do not control your thoughts before 8 a.m., someone else will. And once they control your thoughts, they begin controlling your life. As the sun begins to rise, most people are already losing a battle they don't even realize they're fighting. Their attention is scattered. Their focus is stolen. Their minds are reacting instead of leading. The Stoics understood that attention is one of the most valuable assets a person possesses. Once it is lost, everything else becomes harder. This leads us to the next piece of Stoic mental armor. Choose your primary mission before the day chooses it for you. Most people wake up with no clear direction. As a result, they spend the day responding to whatever appears in front of them. Messages, notifications, problems, requests, distractions. By sunset, they feel exhausted but accomplished very little. Marcus Aurelius believed that a person should begin each day with purpose. A clear understanding of what truly matters. There was once an archer famous throughout his kingdom. His accuracy seemed almost supernatural. One day a young student asked him the secret. The master placed several targets in a field. Then he asked the student which one he intended to hit. The student pointed at all of them. The archer smiled. Then he lowered his bow. If everything is the target, nothing is the target. The lesson was profound. Focus creates power. Without focus, effort becomes scattered. Every morning, ask yourself, what is the most important thing I must accomplish today? Not 10 things. Not 20 things. One thing. The answer creates clarity. And clarity creates momentum. Another layer of mental armor involves something many people avoid. Silence. Modern life fears silence. Every spare moment is filled with noise. Music. Videos. Conversations. Notifications. Yet Marcus Aurelius often used quiet reflection to strengthen his mind. There was an elderly craftsman who lived on the edge of a bustling city. Every morning before beginning work, he sat quietly for 30 minutes. No distractions. No conversations. No interruptions. Just thought. When asked why, he replied, "The world spends all day talking to me. This is the time I spend listening to myself." Most people never hear their own thoughts clearly because they are constantly surrounded by noise. Silence sharpens awareness. Silence reveals priorities. Silence strengthens self-control. When you sit quietly each morning, you begin noticing things you normally miss. You notice fears. You notice goals. You notice habits. You notice opportunities. And awareness is the beginning of transformation. The next piece of mental armor may surprise many people. Visualize the person you want to become. The Stoics understood that actions are influenced by identity. People act according to who they believe they are. There was once a young man known throughout his village for being lazy and unreliable. One evening an old teacher asked him a question. "What kind of man do you wish to become?" The young man described someone disciplined, strong, respected, reliable. The teacher listened carefully. Then he asked, "If that man woke up tomorrow morning, how would he spend his day?" The question changed everything. The young man began making decisions based on the person he wanted to become rather than the person he had been. Over time, his life transformed. Every morning, before the world fills your head with distractions, picture your ideal self. How do they think? How do they respond to adversity? How do they handle temptation? How do they treat others? That vision becomes a compass. And a person with a compass rarely gets lost. But perhaps the greatest threat to mental armor is not distraction. It is emotional weakness. Most people believe their moods control their actions. The Stoics believed the opposite. They believed discipline must come before emotion. There was a farmer who woke every morning before sunrise. Rain or sunshine. Motivated or unmotivated. Happy or unhappy. His neighbors often asked how he remained so consistent. His answer was simple. I do not negotiate with my responsibilities. That single mindset made him successful. Most people wait to feel ready. The Stoics acted before they felt ready. Because action creates motivation far more often than motivation creates action. Imagine the power of beginning each morning with this thought. My feelings do not decide my actions. My values decide my actions. Suddenly excuses lose their influence. And discipline becomes stronger than emotion. In the next chapter, we will uncover the most powerful mental armor of all. The morning mindset that separates ordinary people from extraordinary ones. The mindset Marcus Aurelius used to remain calm during war, uncertainty, and immense responsibility. The mindset that can transform how you approach every challenge in your life. Before we continue, subscribe to Focus and Conquer. Because every lesson on this channel is designed to help you build an unbreakable mind. And in a world filled with distraction, an unbreakable mind may be your greatest advantage. Remember this. The quality of your day is often determined before the world even knows you're awake. Most people believe that mental strength is built during major life events. During hardship. During crisis. During moments of extreme pressure. The Stoics believed something different. They believed mental strength is built long before those moments arrive. It is built in the quiet hours. The unseen hours. The hours when nobody is watching. And nowhere is that more true than in the early morning. This brings us to another layer of Stoic mental armor. Practice gratitude before demanding more from life. Many people wake up immediately thinking about what they lack. More money. More success. More opportunities. More recognition. Their minds begin the day focused on scarcity. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to appreciate what was already present. Not because he lacked ambition. Because gratitude creates strength while entitlement creates weakness. There was once a wealthy merchant who spent his life chasing more. Every achievement was followed by another desire. Every victory felt temporary. Every success left him unsatisfied. One morning he met an old fisherman sitting peacefully beside a river. The merchant asked him why he seemed so content despite owning very little. The fisherman smiled. Every morning I thank life for what I already have before asking for anything else. The merchant laughed. Years later, after achieving even greater wealth, he realized the fisherman possessed something he had been chasing his entire life. Contentment. The Stoics understood this truth. A grateful mind is harder to disturb. A grateful mind is harder to manipulate. A grateful mind is stronger than circumstances. Before 8 a.m., remind yourself of what is already good. Your health. Your family. Your opportunities. Your ability to begin again. That simple habit changes how you see the world. The next piece of mental armor may be uncomfortable. But it is one of the most powerful exercises in Stoicism. Remember that time is limited. Modern society avoids thinking about mortality. The Stoics did the opposite. Not because they were negative. Because they understood that awareness of life's limits creates urgency. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that life is short. This thought did not make him fearful. It made him focused. There was once a young traveler who delayed every dream. He constantly said, Someday I will start. Someday I will learn. Someday I will pursue my goals. Years passed. One day he encountered an elderly man sitting beneath a tree. The old man asked him what he planned to do with the rest of his life. The traveler answered with a long list of ambitions. The old man listened quietly. Then he asked, And what makes you believe you have unlimited time? The question struck him like lightning. For the first time, he understood that someday was not guaranteed. That realization changed everything. He stopped postponing his life. The Stoics knew that remembering life's limits increases appreciation for the present moment. Every morning ask yourself, if today truly mattered, how would I live it? The answer reveals your priorities. The answer reveals your purpose. And purpose creates strength. The next layer of mental armor separates leaders from followers. Take ownership of your day. Many people begin their mornings as victims. Victims of circumstances. Victims of moods. Victims of other people's behavior. Victims of bad luck. Marcus Aurelius refused to live that way. He believed responsibility creates freedom. There was once a captain who commanded 2 ships. When storms arrived, the crew of one ship blamed everything. The weather. The sea. The wind. The crew of the second ship focused on solutions. Adjust the sails. Strengthen the ropes. Change direction. Years later, one crew remained trapped in excuses. The other became known for excellence. The difference was ownership. The Stoics understood that blaming feels satisfying for a moment. But responsibility changes lives. Before 8 a.m., remind yourself, I am responsible for my attitude. I am responsible for my effort. I am responsible for my character. This mindset transforms ordinary people into extraordinary ones. But perhaps the most important mental armor of all has nothing to do with productivity. Nothing to do with achievement. Nothing to do with success. It has everything to do with peace. Because what good is success if your mind remains restless? What good is achievement if anxiety controls your life? The next lesson reveals how Marcus Aurelius protected his inner peace even while carrying the weight of an empire. And it may be the most powerful lesson in this entire routine. Before we continue, subscribe to Focus and Conquer. Because every lesson on this channel is designed to help you build discipline, resilience, and the mindset needed to conquer your greatest challenges. Remember this. The strongest morning routine is not the one that makes you busy. It is the one that makes you mentally unshakable. And that kind of strength begins long before the rest of the world wakes up. As the morning unfolds, most people become prisoners of whatever happens around them. A negative comment changes their mood. A disappointing message ruins their focus. A small problem destroys their motivation. Marcus Aurelius understood that if your peace depends on circumstances, your peace is always fragile. That is why the next piece of Stoic mental armor is so important. Protect your inner peace before the world tests it. The Stoics believe that external events do not have the power we think they do. What gives them power is our reaction. There was once a respected teacher known throughout his city for his calmness. One afternoon a stranger entered his classroom and began insulting him in front of everyone. The students expected anger. They expected confrontation. Instead, the teacher remained calm. When the stranger finally stopped speaking, one student asked how he had maintained his composure. The teacher replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, who does the gift belong to?" The student answered, "The person who offered it." The teacher smiled. "The same is true for insults." The room fell silent. The lesson was unforgettable. Every morning before the world begins speaking to you, remind yourself that not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every criticism deserves your energy. Not every battle deserves your participation. Inner peace is protected by what you refuse to carry. The next piece of mental armor is one that many people completely ignore. Train yourself to be comfortable with discomfort. Most people spend their lives chasing comfort. The Stoics trained themselves to handle discomfort, because they knew that life would eventually demand it. There was once a young warrior who feared hardship. Whenever conditions became difficult, he complained. Whenever obstacles appeared, he searched for easier paths. One day his mentor brought him to the top of a mountain during winter. The wind was freezing. The climb was exhausting. The conditions were miserable. The young warrior spent the entire journey complaining. At the summit, the mentor pointed toward the horizon. The view was breathtaking. Then he said, "The strongest views are rarely found on the easiest roads." Years later, the young warrior became known for extraordinary resilience. Not because life became easier, because he became stronger. Marcus Aurelius understood this principle deeply. Every morning, remind yourself that discomfort is not your enemy. Growth often lives inside discomfort. Discipline lives inside discomfort. Strength lives inside discomfort. The people who accomplish remarkable things are not those who avoid hardship. They are those who learn to walk through it. This leads us to another powerful layer of mental armor. Stop borrowing problems from the future. One of the greatest causes of anxiety is worrying about things that have not happened. People suffer over imaginary conversations, imaginary failures, imaginary disasters. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to focus on the present moment. Because the present is where action exists. The future is where speculation exists. There was once a farmer who spent every evening worrying about drought. When rain arrived, he worried about floods. When crops grew, he worried about pests. When the harvest succeeded, he worried about next year. An elderly neighbor eventually asked him a question. How many of the things you worried about actually happened? The farmer thought for a moment. Very few. The neighbor smiled. Then most of your suffering came from imagination. How many people are doing the same thing right now? Worrying about conversations that have not happened. Problems that have not arrived. Outcomes that may never occur. The Stoics understood that mental energy is precious. Do not waste today's strength fighting tomorrow's imaginary battles. Focus on what exists now. Focus on what can be done now. Focus on the step directly in front of you. And suddenly life becomes much lighter. But now we arrive at one of the deepest lessons in the entire Stoic Mental Armor Routine. A lesson that separates extraordinary people from ordinary people. A lesson that Marcus Aurelius practiced even while carrying the weight of an empire. The lesson is simple. Begin each day with character, not mood. Most people allow their mood to decide their actions. If they feel motivated, they work. If they feel inspired, they take action. If they feel energetic, they pursue their goals. The Stoics believed this was dangerous. Because moods change constantly. Character remains. There was once a stonemason who spent decades building magnificent structures. Every day he arrived before sunrise. Every day he worked with precision. Every day he honored his craft. A young apprentice once asked him how he remained so consistent. The mason answered, I do not wake up asking how I feel. I wake up asking who I choose to be. That answer contains extraordinary wisdom. Character is stronger than mood. Values are stronger than emotions. Purpose is stronger than temporary feelings. The strongest people do not wait for motivation. They act according to principle. And that principle becomes their armor. As we move toward the final chapter, we will uncover the most powerful Stoic morning practice of all. The habit that ties every lesson together. The habit that transforms discipline into identity. The habit that can completely change the trajectory of your life. Before we continue, subscribe to Focus and Conquer. Because every lesson on this channel is designed to help you build a mind that remains calm, disciplined, and unconquerable no matter what challenges life places in your path. Remember this. Your morning is not preparing you for your day. Your morning is preparing you for your life. And the stronger your mind becomes before 8 a.m., the stronger your future becomes after it. We have explored the habits that strengthen the mind before most people even begin their day. We have learned how to protect attention, how to expect challenges, how to embrace silence, how to practice gratitude, how to value time, how to take ownership, how to protect inner peace, how to become stronger than discomfort, how to stop borrowing problems from the future, and how to build character instead of depending on mood. But now we arrive at the final piece of Stoic mental armor. The principle that connects every lesson we have discussed. The principle that transformed Marcus Aurelius from a man facing unimaginable pressure into one of history's greatest examples of self-mastery. The final principle is this. Win the morning, win the mind. And when you win the mind, you begin winning your life. Most people believe success begins with achievement. The Stoics believed success begins with self-control. Before you can lead a business, you must lead yourself. Before you can conquer challenges, you must conquer distractions. Before you can master circumstances, you must master your thoughts. There was once an elderly king who spent decades ruling his kingdom. As he approached the end of his life, a young prince asked him the secret to his success. The prince expected a complicated answer. A strategy. A military tactic. A leadership formula. Instead, the old king smiled and said, "Every morning I won the first battle." The prince looked confused. "What battle?" The king pointed toward his head. "The battle that takes place here." The prince never forgot those words. Because he eventually discovered that the greatest victories are often invisible. The victory over laziness. The victory over fear. The victory over distraction. The victory over anger. The victory over excuses. These victories rarely receive applause. Yet they determine the quality of a person's entire life. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most. Each morning he prepared himself mentally before facing the demands of the Roman Empire. He knew that if he entered the day without discipline, the day would control him. But if he entered the day with clarity, purpose, and self-control, he could face whatever came his way. And that lesson remains just as powerful today. Every morning you are given a choice. You can wake up and immediately become reactive. Or you can become intentional. You can allow distractions to lead your day. Or you can decide your direction before distractions arrive. You can begin with chaos. Or you can begin with clarity. There was once a gardener who planted 2 trees on the same day. The first tree received daily attention. Water. Protection. Care. The second tree was ignored. Years later, one tree stood tall and strong. The other struggled to survive. When people admired the healthy tree, they focused on what they could see. Its height. Its beauty. Its strength. But the gardener knew the truth. The tree's success was determined long before it became visible. It was determined by what happened every day. Your mind works the same way. The strength people see later is created by the discipline nobody sees now. The confidence people admire later is created by the habits nobody notices now. The resilience people respect later is created by the choices nobody applauds now. Every morning is a vote. A vote for the person you are becoming. A vote for discipline or distraction. A vote for growth or stagnation. A vote for strength or weakness. The question is, which direction are your votes taking you? Because life rarely changes overnight. But it can change through daily repetition. One disciplined morning becomes a disciplined week. A disciplined week becomes a disciplined month. A disciplined month becomes a disciplined year. And a disciplined year can completely transform a life. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning with a different mindset. Imagine beginning the day before the world begins influencing your thoughts. Imagine starting with gratitude instead of anxiety. Purpose instead of confusion. Discipline instead of excuses. Clarity instead of distraction. Now imagine doing that consistently. Not once. Not twice. But every day. The results would be extraordinary. Because the greatest transformation is rarely dramatic. It is gradual. It happens quietly. Like the sunrise. You do not notice it immediately. Yet suddenly the darkness is gone. The Stoics understood this. They knew that greatness is not built in moments of inspiration. It is built in moments of consistency. And consistency begins with the choices you make when nobody is watching. As you leave this video, remember the complete Stoic Mental Armor Routine. Own your mind before the world does. Expect challenges before they arrive. Choose your mission. Embrace silence. Visualize your best self. Act regardless of mood. Practice gratitude. Remember that time is limited. Take ownership of your day. Protect your peace. Become comfortable with discomfort. Stop borrowing problems from the future. Build character instead of depending on motivation. And above all, win the morning. Because when you win the morning, you strengthen the mind. When you strengthen the mind, you strengthen your life. And when you strengthen your life, you become the person you were always capable of becoming. Perhaps that person is already inside you. Waiting. Waiting for discipline. Waiting for focus. Waiting for courage. Waiting for a decision. And that decision can begin tomorrow morning. Not next week. Not next month. Not someday. Tomorrow. Before 8 a.m. Before the noise. Before the distractions. Before the world tells you who to be. Choose who you will become. Thank you for spending this time with Focus and Conquer. If this video inspired you, subscribe to Focus and Conquer and join a growing community dedicated to Stoicism, discipline, resilience, self-mastery, and mental toughness. Every lesson on this channel is designed to help you develop a stronger mind and a stronger life. And remember this final Stoic truth. A weak morning creates a difficult day. A disciplined morning creates a powerful life. Stay focused. Stay disciplined. Stay resilient. Stay unconquerable. And continue building the mental armor that no challenge can break. Welcome to Focus and Conquer. The first victory of every day is won in silence. Win that victory, and the rest of the day becomes easier to conquer.